Hello everyone, my name is Ian, the part-time Dungeon Master. How's it going? Welcome back to D20 Sundays. Sorry for the break, I covered everything as to reasons why back in the Monday vlog that happened. And I hope you guys join me for content in the future. If you are new to the channel, please like and subscribe, leave a comment as any content that you would like to see. And for those of you on Reddit, since you are probably like 90% of my viewers, please subscribe as well, because that would help me expand this channel. And let me know more as to what you guys want from this channel, as I do this as a hobby, and I'd like to be able to reach more people. So if you guys could help, that'd be great. So going off of one of the previous D20 Sundays videos, which I will put up here in the iCard and link down below as well, regarding a swashbuckling noble by the name of Vanessa, or Ari as she started calling herself, and her wonderful group of idiots. Well, as I explained in the last video on this, it didn't go that well. They killed the one noble that they were supposed to blackmail, and, well, let me rephrase that. Vanessa killed the one noble they were supposed to blackmail, and two of the other nobles in the middle of the, the ball, gathering, and, fun times. So, as far as the character that always has a Rick in his name is Rorik, and he's a farmer from Rorikstead. Yeah, that's what I gotta deal with. Rorik, the farmer, was dressed up as the noble that they were supposed to be blackmailing, and, well, that fell through very quickly. Kobe, which is the kobold, he was essentially, setting up traps for Vanessa to escape, but, that didn't happen, so the guards were like, the hell are you doing? And he was like, I was setting up traps so that way you could push them into the traps. And he rolled well on his deception, so they were like, okay, good waiter. And Lorendal, which isn't his actual name. His name is Grant. And I don't mean the player's name. I mean the character's name is Grant, but he's the wizard. And he's like, who would listen to a wizard named Grant? No, I will be named Lorendal from now on. So he's Lorendal the wizard, because Lorendal sounds much more like a wizard's name versus Grant. Anyways. He was busy getting his Mac on. Like, he was getting his groove on with this one noble woman, and he was talking her up and everything. I'm like, Jesus Christ. So, Vanessa / Ari, whichever you want to call her, and Rorik were essentially apprehended by the guards. They realized they were outnumbered, and their two teammates were not going to be able to help them. So, they surrendered. They were stripped of their gear, they were handcuffed and shackled and put into the back of a carriage and being sent off to prison. And the kobold, Kobe, had to go and grab Lorendal and, yank him out of, like, hey, come on, I know you're trying to get your groove on, but we gotta save our idiots. So they go off to go save their idiots. So, a little bit of a setup as far as how... This is the same way I described it to them. Essentially, the prison is just outside of town. And this is a port town. So there's a small island just off the coast where there's this one long, very narrow stone bridge that essentially is the only access to said island. Because it's got sheer cliffs on all sides and, nothing pretty much goes in or out. And it's a very long drop down. So, Kobe and Lorendal got there first. They used a number of back ways of, paths and, some liberal use of, like, how fast that they were traveling, but, whatever. I let them get there first. So they got there first, and they're like, okay, what do we do? Well, Kobe, I allowed them all to have, like, one, like, magic item, essentially. Kobe's was an immovable rod. So he put an immovable rod in the center of the bridge, at, where, it's far enough from both sides to where guards on either side can, like, come, ambush them, because it's a mile-long bridge. So he puts it dead center, like this, to where it would, like, catch all of the, like, the raiments and everything of the horses and, like, essentially tie them up and, like, cause the cart to wreck and, like, become stuck. So it's like, okay, cool, whatever. And it's not really a cart, it's like a carriage. And it's like, got like, It's like a hooded carriage, except for it's all wood, and you know, has a metal lock on it. So he puts that down. Lorindal casts Minor Illusion to essentially like put it like right in front of it, so that way it looks like it's invisible. It's not really there, and you know they hang off the sides to essentially hide and wait for like you know the carriage to come by. So the carriage comes by and hits it. Just as Kobe planned, it hits it, it gets tangled up, but then the carriage ends up like almost going completely off the edge of the bridge. It's now like hanging off the edge of the bridge. The only thing that's keeping it there is the horses that are, you know, freaking out, and their harnesses are like tied up to this immovable rod that's not moving. So they're like, cool, it's tied up. Great, let's move. So Kobe, thinking, you know, okay, things are going to get worse if we don't act quickly. I'm going to quick use my rope and like fortify, or yeah, I said fortify essentially, you know, using the rope to make sure that the cart doesn't fall by like tying it up to the bridge itself. Lorindal climbed onto the back of the carriage to try and unlock it, only for them to realize he can't lockpick because he doesn't have any thieves' tool and he's got no sleight of hand. And so he asked Kobe, who apparently is not that type of kobold and doesn't have thieves' tools either. So he starts using Firebolt to burn at the lock. Mind you, it's like hanging like this. So he's like up here on top of it, hanging upside down, or like leaning over the edge, and like Firebolt, Firebolt, Firebolt on the lock. Meanwhile, the two players inside, Vanessa, Ari, and Rorik, are freaking out. Vanessa is like clinging her best to anything that she can, and Rorik is, you know, not that bright, so he starts smashing against the door as hard as possible, shaking the whole thing. And it's like, okay, this is fine. This is fine. This is not fine. And, you know, then Kobe like climbs up onto it, you know, because he's thinking, okay, cool, you know, maybe I can break the lock from the outside. I've got a hammer, and if you keep heating it up, you know, it'll weaken the metal. So you got that going on. None of them bothered to check whether or not what happened to the guards that were on the carriage. There was 2 guards, 1 on each horse. When everything happened, they got dismounted and like flung forward. So they were still on the bridge. They had just like been temporarily stunned or in a daze. But they got up. Because they weren't dead, they weren't completely knocked unconscious or anything. And no one checked on them. So they got up and they saw like, oh, our horses are stuck on, well, now the illusion's gone, on an immovable rod. And there's rope. And there's the criminals trying to break out their friend. Well, it would be cheaper just to get rid of the carriage and them. So they cut the harnesses and they cut the rope. Now, admittedly, maybe that's me being a dick. Maybe that is me being a dick. But at the same time, they should have checked to make sure the guards were, like, dealt with before they both climbed onto the, you know, the carriage. So the carriage plummets some 60 feet to the watery rocks below. And by watery rocks, I mean like there's jagged rocks that waves went over sometimes. And Lorindal casts Featherfall on himself and Kobe because I didn't bother refuting him or like, you know, looking it up at the time. He believed that he could not cast Featherfall onto the carriage, so he didn't. And he had no way of having line of sight on the other 2, so he couldn't cast it on them either. So 2 players died that night. The carriage plummeted down to the rocks below and, you know, struck the rocks and flat out killed both of them. They did, however, because I am a nice dungeon master, were able to quickly fly down using Featherfall and, you know, gather up their comrades and, like, drag them free of the wreckage and get them to a church quick enough for them to be revivified. the cost of a large donation to the church, but they got it. They spent like another day of like fishing their gear out of the carriage because it was in the chest that was in the carriage. But they got their gear back, and they're like all sitting there on the edge of the beach essentially, and they're like, okay, nothing went according to plan. We survived, ish, but nothing went according to plan. All we wanted to do was essentially make life for the people here better. And instead, we killed a bunch of people, caused a huge wreck, and just made things worse. They made things worse. Anyways, that's what I wanted to share for this D20 Sundays. I hope you enjoyed the story and that you come by for another one next time. Laters!